on the table over here if you want. Let me get my... And people will be wandering in because back here is unpredictable sometimes. Although it was actually better today. Yeah, very good. Since the fires, the canyon roads on both sides, a lot more people on the freeway. And even Ventura Boulevard is backed up. It's crazy. Normally it takes me like 12 minutes to get here. It's like 30 minutes. It's crazy. Yeah. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. March 17th. Oh, I didn't wear green today. Today's St. Patrick's Day. Oh my gosh, I got to go home. Come back with green. Okay, we have a few new people here today. Raise your hand if this is your first time here. I met two. Oh, you've been here before. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, welcome. Welcome. So there's a couple in the front. If you, during the breaks and all, talk to them. welcome, Yolanda and Lynn, was it? Okay, to Hazak today. That's great. So today's program, which we're going to introduce in just a few moments, how community members can prepare for emergencies and disasters. And then we're going to be visited by Rabbi Averbach, the Jewish origins of cinema. Very interesting. And then, of course, we have our normal lunch, buffet lunch, $10 per person, unless you bring your own, and followed by a Great Decisions discussion group in the Youth Lounge at 12:45. The topic today is India-U.S. relations. And the Torah study with Rabbi Feinstein will be in the Bernstein balcony at 1 o'clock. So that's the program for today. We have our Walk with the Rabbi coming up on Sunday, March 23rd. We're going to be having a walk with our new assistant rabbi here, Rabbi Aronoff. And so that's at 10 a.m. at Lake Balboa. There's a flyer with information about it at the table at the front. So if you're interested on a nice sunny Sunday morning, get a little exercise, get a little sun, and meet people, including get to know the rabbi. We have our special Hazak private docent tour at the Skirball coming up. We had to delay it because of the fires and all, but that's coming up on Wednesday, March 26th at noon, and will be followed by an optional lunch at the Skirball. If you're interested, we can still take sign-ups right now. It's $18 per person in advance, but you do have to sign up by about a week before the 23rd, so that'd be like the 17th or 16th. And then the next Hazak Monday program will be in 2 weeks. On Monday, March 31st, we're going to be having a talk about experiential graphic design and its impact on places and spaces in our community. And our own Sharon Bressler's daughter, Jennifer, is going to be our speaker that morning, followed by a live musical performance, The Music, the Language of Love, which is going to be given by the same couple that came last year and did the singing for us, and they're going to be singing some songs about love for us with the piano. So, as always, if you have any questions about upcoming programs, all that information is available not only in the emails that you get, but on the vbs.org/Hazak webpage. So anything you need to know about any of our programs. And with that, I'm going to invite up Eileen to introduce our first speaker for today.
Good morning. I had the good fortune to meet Eric at a community meeting that was sponsored by our assemblywoman. Louder? Yeah, you can hear me now. So, It was a bit prescient because it was last fall before we had all these issues in our community with the fires and the damages. So the topic today is how community members can prepare for emergencies and disasters. Another uplifting lecture. During the final stretch of an accidental career working on the water as a commercial mariner, tugboat captain in the port complex, Eric returned back to school to take a graduate studies program in the field of emergency services administration at Cal State University Long Beach. Upon completion, he pivoted into a new career with the City of Los Angeles within its emergency management department. Welcome.
Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it. Good morning, folks. And if I may, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Donnie Hall. She's here to support. And would you like to say a few words? Or?
Oh, just good morning and thank you for having us.
Yes. All right. Thank you. And thank you for letting us have a presence here. It's admittedly not an easy conversation to have, but kudos to you for your interest in learning how you and even more importantly, your loved ones and neighbors can achieve a higher level of preparedness. So the City of Los Angeles has a signature program, and you could see the acronym RYLAN, and that stands for the Ready Your Los Angeles Neighborhood. And so I think Joel touched on the theme of community, people talking to each other, and the city is aligned with that at its most organic sense, how we can achieve the highest level of inclusive preparedness with your community. And those will be the people that you may see even more than your family. So getting to know your neighbors is a key part of that. And I'll lead off with what we do as a city is when we meet groups like you that are engaged and want to learn more, then we can also help facilitate going to little subsets of your community and meeting with neighbors and kind of kickstarting and energizing the conversation about preparedness. So yes, as Eileen said in her introduction, I do come from the commercial maritime industry. It was a great way to provide for my family, but at the end of it, I felt like I wanted to see what more there was in life, something bigger than myself. But you would think, well, global shipping and supply chains, that's pretty massive. That's obviously much bigger than any of us. But I got to see in the last couple years how something as sprawling as a global supply chain can be vulnerable and how that impacts everybody. And so that led to me thinking that how everything that all our critical infrastructure is tightly interconnected. So for shipping, you will recall there was the Suez Canal a few years ago, a heavy wind event, and a pilot was on board a container ship transiting up the Suez Canal when the winds blew the ship off course and it became grounded. So that's a critical juncture point for shipping, and within hours there was a backlog of hundreds of ships, which turned into thousands of ships. And that's just from one vessel that had an errant decision of transiting at the inopportune time. So that just spurred my thinking, and like, again, Eileen mentioned a new adventure and purpose in my life. So, but it's a great job, so. And that was my last day of work. I already had a foot in the door with the city, and they have a great internship program. So for those of you with younger ones in the family, this affords you or them an opportunity to get kind of a trial basis, see if this kind of career is a good fit. And so I took that, and after a year of the internship program, I was offered a full-time position. And so here I am today. But another key part of my journey was being more involved with the community. And so for myself, I live in southeast Los Angeles County, and they have a pretty robust neighborhood watch program in the city of Lakewood. So they have 400 watch captains, roughly 400 blocks. So it's pretty good engagement. It's about 80% of the blocks are represented by a block captain. And so we become the natural focal point for going back to our neighbors and meeting with them and present information, including emergency preparedness plans. So I'll speak more of that Ryland and what that means for you possibly. And but it's a great way to utilize assets that are around you in your immediate vicinity. And this here is where I gravitated to emergency communications. I went through a CERT program, and that's the Citizens Emergency Response Teams that in the city of Los Angeles are still taught by firefighters and offer a 3-day, 21-hour program that covers a pretty robust number of topics, and not only preparedness, but learning how to go through your neighborhoods, identify the strengths of the people around you, what they can bring to the fight in terms of preparedness. You could have a retired plumber, school teachers, people that work night shifts. You can get creative in the process of developing a plan. So I'll touch more on that later. But emergency communications, you could see where it's logical. I communicate with ships and vessel traffic controllers. And so radio communications was like a in for me. So that's where we're located. We're a small agency within the city of Los Angeles, roughly 32 full-time employees, and 5 or 6 of the interns, or we call them fellows. But we like to think that for our small size, we pack a lot of punch. We had several legs of operations going when the fire started. We have a emergency operations center. Oops. Oh, that's on 500 East Temple. And that's about a half-mile east of the City Hall. And what's interesting about that building is that it was after 2001, the attacks on the Twin Towers, the city allocated funding to, when they realized it's best to have a standalone emergency management department structure. So a referendum was passed, funding was allocated, and in 2008, the completion of the 2-story emergency management building was completed. So it's featured by an elevated foundation that rests on isolated beams and rollers, so the movement of the building can be in line with any seismic activity. And here you can see the picture of the Emergency Operations Center, and that's where we coordinate and get all our needed partners within the city and outside to facilitate that coordination of the overall response. So that really came into play when we had this activated around the clock for over 6 weeks in response to the fires. But It has about 96 seats, so 17 pods, and so we can draw from the maritime complex through the port of LA all the way to the foothills where DOT has a big presence and everybody in between. So emergency management, we stay awake a lot of times thinking how to get our residents more prepared, because we do face a myriad of threats. And you can see the most pronounced ones: fires, earthquakes, flooding. We had a bit of flooding where on blue sky days, 1 inch of rain doesn't constitute a pressing emergency, but we see that the burn scar areas results in areas that have changed and facilitate the flow of water and erosion. And so we activated in response to that because there were people that did have to evacuate within the city. So we also focus on the human-induced ones. I spoke earlier of how everything is tightly interconnected with our critical infrastructure. And so terrorist attacks, threats, airplane crash, material spills. Out of the port, there's a 24-hour rail of materials, both in stored in containers, but also loose bulk containers, chemicals, liquids. And so we kind of raised the risk by transporting these materials at all hours of the day. Fun fact is that at the end of this year, possibly into next spring, the Vincent Thomas Bridge, which connects the two ports, is a vital cog for inter-port complex traffic. That'll be shut down, and the plan is for the decks to be redone. So that will take that bridge out of commission for 18 months or more. And so we have to think, you're up here in this part of the city, how would that impact you? So we, as emergency planners, have to try to think ahead of that and come up with plans to kind of mitigate the impact on folks. And this is just a representation of how something like a cyber hack, and we call it the IT or information technology sector. When you get a ransomware attack, how it can compound its impact on many other sectors of the economy, as well as our day-to-day life, that we wouldn't necessarily think have an impact. So you can see it could, we call it cascading effects, and it's one cyber attack can impact a multitude of these sectors, from water and wastewater supplies, the defense industry in El Segundo, as well as the airport. So it's just examples that when we do our planning, it does help to have that creative second and third level impact that we don't consider right off the bat. But most of our emergency operation plans in the city of Los Angeles has, by and large, identified a large scale earthquake as our greatest risk, no matter where we are in the city. And that's because of the San Andreas Fault that runs south of Imperial County to the east of San Diego. And actually as far south as the Baja California. But this goes up 800 miles throughout the length of California. And I've identified historic earthquakes in the California history. But the bottom one is when the last major earthquake that hit the San Andreas Fault occurred. So that's roughly a 200 or 150 year cycle. And so seismologists like Dr. Lucy Jones at United States Geologic Service, she's the spokesperson kind of for the earthquake industry. She's the one that you'll be seeing on television as a public face, the trusted authority of what that means for us. And so that's why the risk of that and the general time frame is put out there as the scenario, about a 7.8, 0.9 earthquake. So in recent times, in 2019, the ridge crest was a very significant 7-point+ earthquake. So it was real specific in terms of its impact, and it was in the earth, centered up in that area, and so there was significant damage, but nothing that constituted a vast impact to the rest of us down here in the Southland area. So this is a visual representation of that earthquake. The one thing that they do not do is the science is amazing. I've seen in the last 10 years their ability to push out information of when an earthquake is occurring real time is a possibility now, but it does not, unfortunately, forecast when an earthquake will occur. They can give, based studying past history of what a trend might be, but they cannot predict when it would happen. So what are our choices then? Your being here today tells me that we want to be ready for when that happens, not a minute afterwards, but 30 days, a year ahead, whatever that may be. Whatever you can do to get prepared is the preferred outcome from this. Oh yeah, I will share all these slides to Eileen and Joel. And so within these slides are links to video pieces that kind of flesh out what some of these concepts that I'm speaking of. These are photos of what occurred in the '94 earthquake in Northridge. And we learned a lot from that. And we learned, it hammered home the point of touching on community. And that was a key vocal point of what after action reports revealed. These photos just illustrate when you have the earthquake, what's most likely going to follow afterwards is fires. So we still use a lot of natural gas in our heating and our appliances. And so we'll talk about what are the simple things we can do to lower the risk of those fires. But if it's a numbers game in a city of 4 million plus, and with events coming up like the Olympics and our great workforce that comes and works here in Los Angeles during the day, you can add another million plus easy to that. Firefighters, as heroic and skilled as they are limited in what they can attack and mitigate. So fires is, when they're small, is when you prefer to fight them versus when they grow. So remember that point as we talk about who's going to be the help after a disaster occurs. The answer would be it's most likely going to be us, at least during that golden hour when you can make the most difference with the life safety, risk of injury, property damage, and environmental risks. That's just a photo. The seismology is a science that's always changing. It takes advantage of telemetry from satellites, so as well as the sensors that have increased in accuracy to know what's going on in the ground below us. So this one of note for Los Angeles is the Inglewood-Newport Fault, and we see other manifestations of damage through the land subsidence, but that's in the PV area. If you were to travel on that road that goes along the coastline of Palos Verdes, you'll see a lot of movement. It's very active. It moves daily. Within a week, it moves and it cuts across the road, and you see that the Public Works Department has to constantly patch that road. So it's very active. And in fact, the landmark Wayfarers Church had to be taken down. And that's, fun fact, that's where my wife and I got married. So it hit home, that we live in a very active geologic area. So we spoke earlier of cascading effects and multiple impacts to different critical sectors. That's a representation of the California aqueduct and the pipeline that runs down throughout the state down to us. And so we have to kind of bear that in mind. What will we do without water? And it could impact communications, sewage, just the basic services. So we spoke earlier on fire. That's just dramatic representations of past fires, but also in recent times we heard the accounts of availability of water being a very pressing issue. I don't know the outcome or responsibility from that, but the Palisades fire that was identified as hampering firefighting efforts. So here you see water after the Northridge earthquake became a very, very pressing matter. We've learned from that, so getting water to folks at Eaton Fire as well as the Palisades Fire, there's our non-government organizations, Red Cross, Rubicon, they were real quick to respond to at least give life-sustaining water to residents as their regular water supplies were gone. So, response times. This graphic shows the outer ring. The professional help would include the firefighters, law enforcement. So they cannot be everywhere all at once. But as we go into the inner circles, it's ultimately those closest physically. Family could be 1, and 1A would be our neighbors. And so the bottom picture is the Superdome in aftermath of the Hurricane Katrina in 2005. FEMA learned a lot, and they get credit for developing this graphic because they've seen that this is the case. So personal preparedness, if we do believe that that's the way we get most bang for our buck and give ourselves and our loved ones a sense of being proactive, there are simple, inexpensive things tasks to take on. And what I'll speak of with Ryland and that Ready Your LA neighborhood, I'll be working off of, we call it the so-called shingle. And within this simple guide, we would come to your neighborhoods, or you, as neighborhood leaders, you can go to them and get them engaged by taking on these simple, inexpensive steps to increase your preparedness. And this is this umbrella of the services or actions you can take. And it starts with preparation, organization, and practice. Those are the things you can do before that bad day happens. And then after the bad event happens, you'll learn how to connect and get information from the city as well as your local electeds, how to communicate with each other. And then we end with training, because what is the use of learning all this if you don't practice and train? But the good news is that we can help with that. We can physically go to you and your subset groups and work with you to kickstart that. In technology, I get to make some recommendations. I have no financial ties to some of this equipment, but through the LA County, I don't recall if at the Skirball event last year, there was someone from the county giving out radios. Maybe Eileen can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's a good side benefit by going to these public safety fairs that are put on by our electeds throughout the city. If the county is there, they're very proactive in pushing out, giving out these emergency radios and alerting systems. So the first thing is developing an emergency plan, and it can be very simple. Where is it going to be our meeting place for our family and our neighbors? You can identify a garage or a park or someone's house that has become a hub for other neighbors to meet at. Who is our point of contacts within our family that are not from the area? I have a sister that lives in the Las Vegas area, and so she's my out-of-town contact. But it can be friends, of course, or co-workers or colleagues. Building a plan that's, when you talk about special items unique to your family, that'll be your financial documents. We found out with the Palisades fire, which we support through standing up a disaster recovery center in Westwood, which is still ongoing. Hopefully you folks have heard that going on Pico. It's a space owned by UCLA, but they were kind enough to let us inhabit that space. They do a lot of servicing of folks that have lost even the ability to identify to their insurance carriers who they are. That means they don't have their identification even. Good news, at that place, at the Disaster Recovery Center, those services are provided, and specialized items like your documents, your policies, your medicines, they recommend having several weeks worth of your medication that you take. And so those are all the kind of conversations you would have. And you would do that for your neighbors too. Bless you. And of course, our furry friends are our family too. And so we put out a checklist, and it's in your books, I think, too, that gives a basic rundown of a go bag that you would have for your pets as well, including the medication, IDs, and so forth. Learning how to shut off gas, that can be done at your home yourself. So you first want to identify the location of that. And you can use a simple tool. It's hard to describe in words, but you can shut off the gas yourself. Just realize that once you shut off the gas, you do eliminate the risk, or lower the risk of fire. Lower the risk, but you just can't turn the gas on yourself. You have to go to the gas company to turn it back on. But it's places like Home Depot. If you go to safety fairs, sometimes someone will be handing out free tools. It's just like a slotted wrench that turns the valve 90 degrees, and then you shut off the gas. So you being here and listening in from home, you're all engaged, but you may have members of your family or friends that are still agnostic about our risks. I found an excellent resource, a multimedia resource through LAist. They put out a series of podcasts. I highly recommend if you're stuck on the freeway, which we all are, you can tune into a podcast, and it's called The Big One, and it gives a good get you the mind space attuned to the possibility of what an earthquake might look like and its impact. So the Big One is centered on earthquakes, and they just put out a series 2 years ago for the Big Burn. So they talk about fire science and what are risks and how the changing climate has really increased those risks to all of us. You had a question, sir? Thank you. The gentleman brought up a great point. At most homes, new builds, have automatic gas shutoffs. So that is true. And some even have a lighted dome that indicate that the automatic shutoff has been activated. So thank you for that. I'll share this video clip. Hopefully the folks watching online can see this, but it's a brief one, and it'll show.
When the earth shakes, the ground moves, and things start to fall, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Have you removed objects from over the bed and over your head? Anchored your possessions securely to the wall? It won't be a pain, and you're not doing it in vain. Are your emergency kits packed? What about your family, your friends? Do they know what to do, how to get in touch, and where to meet? Do you know how to drop, cover, and hold on, covering your head and neck? What if you're outside? Or in a car? After the shaking stops, look around. Figure out what to do. Stay away from damaged areas. Turn on a radio. Reach out for help. And if you're trapped, do not move about. Stay calm. Only shout as a last resort. Once everything and everyone is safe, get prepared. An aftershock could be on its way. So before the earth shakes, the ground moves, and things start to fall, get prepared. Make a plan. Practice what you know, because an earthquake can happen anytime, anywhere. You never know.
This is a representation of the apartment building that collapsed after the Northridge earthquake, and that resulted in the most fatalities. So what the city of Los Angeles has learned is to identify structures and without tearing down the existing structure, learn how to best shore up those structures that exhibit this kind of construction. So that's an ongoing program. They identified thousands of homes within the city and have roughly 50% of those that have undergone that type of seismic retrofit. And it's an ongoing program. I don't have the link to it, but it's put on by, I believe, the LA Department of Building Safety. And so I recommend that. The bottom right part of the graphic, it doesn't show it real clearly, but it shows how they would shore up that building so it won't collapse as readily as without it. The state has also put out earthquake brace and bolt program. I may have the maybe bolt and brace, but that's active program. I signed on for it. There's a pretty good waiting list, but they increased the number of zip codes that are allowing people to get the construction of a seismic retrofit on homes that have elevated foundations shored up, mostly by bolting, putting in reinforced wood sections to make them more resilient to the side-to-side shaking. So we'll talk about the Ryland program. I spoke with you, encouraging you to meet with your neighbors. And I'll show a little video on those, like an introduction to this program.
California has taken a major jolt.
Our number one priority at the Emergency Management Department is the safety and well-being of everyone in Los Angeles. And we know that being prepared can make all the difference if there's a major disaster. Firefighters, police officers, and paramedics may not get to every single block immediately, but we can all be there for one another before first responders even arrive in our neighborhoods. And we can get together and get prepared today with Ready Your LA Neighborhood or Ryland.
This free resource is a guide through the steps to prepare, organize, and train for whatever nature or fate might bring our way. Ready Your LA Neighborhood will help you learn about your neighborhood resources, such as skills and equipment you possess collectively, the location of utility shutoffs, and where people who may need more assistance live.
All of this information will empower you to act quickly after a disaster strikes, to reduce injuries, limit damage to your neighborhood, and even help save a life. So please, join us and help make your community and your city better prepared.
Every day, we protect and serve Angelinos. However, in a citywide disaster, such as a major earthquake, there simply are not enough of us to immediately help everyone.
In disasters like the Northridge earthquake, our firefighters respond to where there is the greatest need. This means you will likely be on your own for days or longer. Being prepared is essential to surviving a disaster.
So what do? Fortunately, we have a new program to help you prepare for disaster. Ready Your LA Neighborhood, or Ryland, helps you and your neighbors take simple, proven preparedness actions. It all starts with you getting to know your neighbors.
Now, you might be thinking, I don't even know my neighbors. Well, by using Ready Your LA Neighborhood, you will get to know your neighbors and you will create a disaster response plan together.
How are you? Thank you for coming.
During your 90-minute meeting with your neighbors, you will determine a gathering place where you will meet after a disaster. You will discover the skills that you and your neighbors collectively possess and learn how you can help each other after a disaster. You might even find out that there's a nurse who lives right across the street. And you may also find out who might have equipment such as a ladder or crutches.
An important part of your meeting is filling out the contact list. This lists everyone, including your neighbors who may need assistance, such as those with a disability, those who are elderly, children who may be home alone, or homes with pets. If you know who lives where, then you'll know who to check on when something happens. Keep in mind, you don't share this with anyone but your immediate neighbors. Finally, you and your neighbors will learn a simple response plan that will help you know exactly what to do in the first hour following a disaster. This will help ground you and help reduce that sense of panic that many experience in a disaster situation.
So how big should my neighborhood be? A neighborhood should be the right size to help each other in that critical first hour when we can save lives and reduce injuries and property damage.
We know from experience that means about 15 to 30 single-family homes and the entire building if you live in an apartment or condo. Or maybe just your floor if it's a large building. If you live in a more sparsely populated area of our city, 5 to 7 homes make sense.
After you've determined your neighborhood boundaries, you can visit readyla.org to obtain your materials for your workshop. At that time, you can also request EMD assistance if you would like. We will provide you with everything you need for a successful meeting.
What's appealed to us, kind of taking the next evolution for the Neighborhood Watch to help us all, as a community, since we're already together, to now consolidate our resources. But more importantly, it just really drove the message of taking care of your loved ones. And there's nothing more important to me than taking care of them.
I think what we have is not just, it's neighbor helping neighbor, but it's a community thing. And I think everybody wants to be part of a community.
The first step was getting to know our neighbors, which was big. So now we know who's home, we know who works.
And it's really interesting when you get a group because somebody is strong in almost every area that needs to be covered. So and if there's not, then people will work together to make that happen anyway. And that's the whole community, neighborhood familial thing. There's always someone who will help someone. That's the most amazing thing that I've discovered about this whole thing. There's always someone who's willing to help someone else. It's pretty awesome.
It's really that easy. Determine the boundaries of your own neighborhood and then contact us to get your meeting materials.
Alrighty, yeah, I'm almost belaboring the point, but yeah, I have business cards and we got our website. I'll give you the information for that that you can reach out to us if you want to kickstart that effort. But we've met with other churches. I met with the LA group of the deaf, and so people with functional needs are a big consideration. So learning what their plan would look like is something that we can help shape, because it's not difficult, but just knowing those things are something we can do. Because we don't want to assume everyone has full functionality and full faculties, that everybody merits and are worth being part of the discussion and what your plan would look like. So these are just lists, not just lists, but these lists are in your books as well. And as I mentioned before, you'll find special items that are particular to your needs. And so when I'll share the slides. There are links to many of the notification systems. But I'll have these postcards advocating for folks to sign up for what we have at the city. So we, of course, put that out for the earthquakes, fires, but also the debris flows. We'll put out message, or where there's rain events. Planned events, too, that have an impact on traffic. Please consider signing up. You can, it's free, of course, and you can tailor it to the kinds of notifications you would like to receive. So going back to our access and functional needs, there are tools that facilitate communications with them. Because those members of our neighborhood that have mobility issues, language barriers, they all have to be incorporated into your planning. So everything resonates with what FEMA calls the whole community approach. So it's just reiterating the same concept that we are our own help till the help gets there. And so I'll end on the big events coming our way. It's pretty daunting to consider the setbacks that we had at the start of the year. But the party line is they're still going to progress with the World Cup next year, the NBA All-Star Game. So these are big planned events. And of course, in 2028, it all culminates with not only the Olympics, but the Paralympics after that. And so these are planned events, but you still have to see how that would impact your community. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm glad to take any questions from here as well as people online. Oh. Hi there. Oh, great question, sir.
Good question.
Yes. Gentleman asked, we've become really reliant on our phones to provide us a wealth of information. And most given days, yes, they do keep us informed night or day. But we've seen in recent events, I'm thinking about Hurricanes Helene and Milton, wiping out the cellular critical infrastructure. So people lost their cell phones. They lost power. So when we speak of the cascading events, when the power infrastructure is out, our phones, unless we have portable generators, will lose our cell phones too. But in that case, they lost both their power supply as well as the cellular communications. So in that case, they reverted to some extent standing up ad hoc ham radio networks. That became a vital source of welfare traffic, people checking in, inquiring where their loved ones are, and then other people within earshot of that radio network would be able to provide information, as well as locations of gas stations, people who are medical service providers. So they had to think outside the box, but yeah, that's a great question, because when we become more reliant, we're going to have to find backup. There are emergency radios that run on batteries that continue to push out information. NOAA will continue to broadcast information. And I spoke earlier of the LA County having presence at some public safety events, issuing free weather radios. So thank you for that question. It'll be the technology of yesteryear that'll have to come into play.
Next question. I believe in '94 the landlines held up for those that still have them. Is that likely to continue?
Thank you. The gentleman asked landlines from '94 earthquake. Those still stood up. Yes, I still have my landline at home. I won't give that up. And on the East Coast after Hurricane Sandy, a lot of our older folks in those communities impacted were relying on landlines to get their communications. And so there's been a pretty robust discussion at the California PUC level to still to not have the cellular service companies eliminate landlines. So as far as I know,
but most of them are. I mean, even our ATT at home, or whatever we have. I mean, it's all ultimately cellular, right? Well,
who funds you? Do you get funds from the federal government?
That's a great question. And well, because I'm thinking of our ongoing response taken for the wildfires, but our general day-to-day funding that sustains us through the year, that comes out of the general fund with the city.
From the city?
Yes.
Because I heard something that I think the federal FEMA money there's a problem with funding there.
Yeah, they are admittedly strapped, and funding, yeah, is something that we constantly. The reason why I paused is because FEMA will reimburse support services that we provide. I speak of the Disaster Recovery Center, because we have staff assigned to that to keep that running. So those kinds of practices in support of FEMA-led actions can be reimbursable. And I'll elaborate further, because if you do trainings within your communities, your electeds might be able to get those trainings recognized as a mitigation practice, and that can result in reimbursement as well. So there are revenue streams that can be pursued.
Okay, well, Eric, thank you very, very much for informing us today.
Thank you, Joe.
I got to go home and make my emergency kit again. I keep forgetting to do that. You know, this is the kind of thing where, you know, you put it out of mind because you wish it doesn't happen, right? but then
I'm guilty of that.
if and when it happens, you wish you'd taken the precautions. So I think it's wise for us to pay attention to this and take care of ourselves and our neighborhoods at home. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come on back and welcome our next speaker, Rabbi Averbach. Oh, and I'll remind you there are handouts over on the table over there if you still want to pick some up.
Oh, these are the newest, the latest and greatest. But I'll get a point of contact and get a mail to you guys. Maybe to here. Would be good. Yes. You're very welcome.
You to disconnect so that we can get the next computer on.
Absolutely.
Yes. There we go.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Hi.
I made it a point to order more and then have them mailed here.
There we go. That's fine. We're good.
About Scarewall, do I have to sign up again, or?
No, if you signed up, then you signed up. Yeah. For this tour, for the. Right. Yeah. What's your last name? Yeah, I think we have your name.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir.
So we go. But we did order some.
Yeah. You can carpool or. I'm going to have Roz check in with people if people need rides or want to carpool. See if we can assist.
Yeah.
Thank you again. So I didn't know that the Ryla, whatever it's called.
Oh, the Ryland,
They
yes.
can come to your neighborhood too.
Oh, yeah.
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 So we have a whole neighborhood group of about 30 families that we've all gotten together, and this would fit right in with us working together.
Yeah, no, we love to do that. And it's easy lift. I don't know if we add credibility to the proceedings, but I think we kickstart it, and then once people start talking to each other, we just step back, and then we know that.
I'm going to do that for us.
Yes, thank you, Joel. That's the best thing, yeah. I heard, yeah.
Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I don't know, you're going to leave the handouts so people can still get them, right?
Yeah.
You're not taking them back.
Oh. Absolutely.
The rest of it. We got to get it set up. Annie became my daughter's nanny. He went away for a while.
This one right here? Yeah, it was, right, yeah.
Ooh.
Be all over me. Thank you.
You'd be back.
Well, thank you for the invite. Both of us are clear as Martian. We'd like to hear your next speaker.
Oh, yeah.
We'll sit in the back.
He's
Great.
very good.
Of course, yep, no problem. Can't forget that.
I'm assuming you need this with you.
Let's see what he has on
I don't know
here.
yet. I don't want to.
No worries, no worries. I just want to look.
Let me see if we'll see if I even show it. Is there a way to hook this up?
Yeah, yeah, I got it.
Okay. This is me in conversation with Michael Bialik. We have me in conversation with Jackie Raffi. We have me in conversation with Elliot Dorff about Schulweis things. Yeah, it was wonderful. Right, maybe 2 years ago, something like that.
What?
Speakers.
They right over there. They're staying.
Yeah, I forget that traffic really gets around Tampa. Right, like slowly. How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Okay, I don't know the answer to that. You can ask Louise for the coffee.
And you?
And freezing. He'll turn the. That's why I always wear my coat. I'm used to it by now.
Yeah, me too. go to the Valley Best Shalom YouTube. Yep, if she goes on the YouTube, yep. Charger port.
Headphones over here.
Headphones over here. Just loop it around. No, you just prop it down on it. Perfect. Sorry. Great.
Let's see if that works. If not, it's all matching. All right, we're up
Alright,
there.
that should be fine. We're good
Okay.
there. Let me retape this really quick.
So it goes till 12:15. We go till 12:15. Yes. Probably be done before that.
That's, if people would love to talk, we'll do that.
Sure.
I'll just remind you.
My dad is on here. His dad's so far away. I'll tell people where I am.
I watched him grow up.
I know.
so-
I'll tell people. Most people know, me from childhood, or my family, or something. There's Linda, who is my neighbor.
So I'll be introducing you, but we
Okay.
have some folks being streamed at home. So there's a camera
Got
back
it.
there.
Okay.
And so they need to hear.
He's
That's
already
how.
picking me. Yeah,
That's how they'll hear you.
Make sure really quick. There it is.
Let me invite people to take their seats again so we can get started and introduce our next speaker. Yeah, please don't trip on the cord.
Okay. Yeah. From here or from the world? Oh, wow. From UCLA. Okay.
So are you able to stick around for lunch, or you have to take off afterwards?
I'll probably take off, but we'll see. We'll see
Okay.
how,
All right.
what phone calls I get from.
Yeah. And Feinstein's doing the Torah study if you want to stick around for that.
Maybe.
That's at 1, but
Gotta get
lunch is
okay.
right.
Gotta get my kids
immediately
from
after.
school, and I gotta.
Yeah, yeah. The life of a busy rabbi. Okay, as you, I got to turn it on again. As you're retaking your seats, let me just remind you a couple of the announcements. We have the Walk with the Rabbi on Sunday, March 23rd. You can pre-sign up for that or just show up at Lake Balboa at 10 a.m. It's going to be with Rabbi Aronoff. And then I'll just remind you again, if you would still like to attend the Skirball tour, the Diane von Furstenberg exhibit at the Skirball on March 26th, you can still sign up through this week, and we can get you involved in that. And with that, I'm going to ask for your attention. It is our great pleasure to welcome back Rabbi Ari Averbach to Valley Beth Shalom Hazak to talk about the Jewish origins of cinema. Interesting topic for a rabbi, huh? Rabbi Averbach is the senior rabbi of Temple Etz Chaim in Thousand Oaks, although he has a home here at VBS, I think, forever. A lot of people know him. And you spent how long here?
I was 2 years the intern here, but my bar mitzvah was in there, and
Okay.
so my whole life.
Rabbi Harold Schulweis convinced him to leave the film industry, which he may tell us a little bit more about, and attend the School of Rabbinic Studies. And he's now on the board of Ziegler and on the ethics committee of the Los Robles Medical Center, among other leadership roles in the community. And we are so excited to have you back, Ari. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You don't have to clap. Stop it. It's fine. I used to stand on this stage and do the Purim play where we dress up as cowboys or whatever we did with Noah. It was a bunch of us dancing in circles back in the Neely and Neil Schnall days. It was wonderful. My bar mitzvah was in that room, and then in the party, we didn't get the good room for the party. We had to get the second best room, which they've redone since then, but my family was very upset that we had to be, I don't know, it worked out okay. I'm a rabbi. Two things before I start, and then I'll start, and then I'll do about 30 minutes, and then I'll say, before I begin, that's what rabbis do. I got water. Yeah, thank you. One is I'm working with the Harold M. Schulweis Institute, which some of you know about. Did all of you know Rabbi Schulweis? Okay. Rabbi Schulweis was the rabbi here for 50 years. He officiated my bar mitzvah. He was there for my wedding, and when it was time to become a rabbi, the tradition is that one of your rabbis kind of walks you down the aisle at ordination and says, this person was once my student and is now my colleague and my friend. And I thought, I have to ask Rabbi Schulweis. And he passed away soon before my ordination, but you need to choose a rabbi. And I'm very lucky. I could have gone to Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Farkas, Rabbi Hoffman. I had a plethora of rabbis. And I decided to take a leap and ask not a rabbi, but Malka Schulweis, Rabbi Schulweis's widow, to walk me down the aisle. And it was one of the best decisions of my life. There's a little note card that you carry. If you are the rabbi, you carry this, and you have to read in front of everybody this little note card that says, this is my student, now my colleague and friend. And she walks me down the aisle. She grabs my arm and she walks me down the aisle. And she gets there, and instead of reading the card, she rips the card and throws it. And she just talks. And everything that Malka said was poetry. There's a good chance she wrote all of Rabbi Schulweis's sermons for him, the way that my wife does for me. And so it was just such a beautiful thing that I got to share that moment with her. And so now I'm on the Schulweis Institute board. I don't know what my title is exactly, but there's a podcast. So for those of you who have cell phones that have a podcast button, you can go to that and type in probably Schulweis. You could type in moral courage, and there's a podcast. We have It's me talking to Jackie Raffi, me talking to Elliot Dorff, to Mayim Bialik, to Lizzie Heidemann and B'nai Lappi, and we were supposed to have one with Rabbi Farkas, but we have to reschedule it. There's a bunch of episodes where we get to talk to people who knew Rabbi Schulweis and keep his legacy going. Which is incredible. So I feel lucky to be part of that project. And just something that's not about me at all is last night I went to go see a show at is it the Wallace? The Wallace, Here There Are Blueberries. I'm a big theater person. I have never seen a show like this before. So if you have the ability to go to the Wallace, it's like watching a documentary film, but it's a play. And so they show real footage, and it's really about people who work at the Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC. And when somebody calls them and says, we were cleaning out Aunt Trudy's attic and we found a whole bunch of letters from the Holocaust, do you want them? And some random American guy who was served in the army in the 40s had something that they'd never seen before. And so it's done as a documentary. I mean, there's real pictures and real footage. It's just incredible. So if you have a chance to go there, it's for another 2 weeks. It's just a really interesting, I can't say it's good. It's fascinating to watch this and to watch a documentary on stage. I don't know any of the actors. The writer, Moises Kaufman, is known. But anyway, there's that. If at any point you have questions, interrupt me, shout them out, raise your hand. I was thinking about early film and Jews in film. So I thought I would start off by playing, maybe you've seen this before. This is one of the earliest pieces of film, if not the earliest piece of film. There's a lot of debate over what is the first film. This might be it. There was a man named Edward Muybridge. I'm sure I'm butchering his name, but there's a lot of vowels that we don't have in people's names. If you see up there, it says E-A-D-W-E-A-R-D. Anyway, Edward Muybridge got into a fight. And the fight was, when a horse is running, is there ever a moment that all 4 feet are off the ground? And his friend said, no, there's always 1 foot on the ground, at least. And he said, I think that they have, at some point, all of their feet off the ground. Well, what can we do? How can we prove this? And they set up this camera that took pictures so quickly, because, it used to be, if you picture like a Hasselblad, one of these big cameras like you see in the movies, and they put the curtain over their head, and you got to pose it. And if you have pictures of maybe your grandparents from Poland or whatever it is, and they're all miserable looking, because you had to stand there, you couldn't move for like 30 seconds. And here was, they thought, well, how are we going to do this? He set up this system to take so many pictures at once. So just to show you what this looks like. So now for the first time we see that when a horse is running, they actually take all 4 feet off the ground at one point, and this is the origin of cinema. Right, so you went to go see, I don't know, The Brutalist or Anora or Wicked, and it's all because some guys got into a fight over how a horse runs. That's the origins of all of this. And just to go to, so was the horse Jewish? I wanted to let you know we're here because the horse was Jewish, and that's the origins of Jews in film. He had to change his name, though, obviously. All right, so here's, too loud, all right. So here's another, just for fun. That's one of the earliest films also. I don't know what we're watching. Did people plan this? Does anybody even know they're in a movie? It's just a street. Okay, there's one more that they're going to show. Let's watch it at half speed for some reason. It was essentially very quick photographs that they then strung together like a flip book. And I wonder, with each of these movies, did they think about it? Did they go, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to stand on the stairs and you're going to dance. Did they choreograph it and write something? Did they sit in a writer's meeting in a pitch room? What if he plays the cello? No, too big. What about a piccolo? Too small. We need something. How did that work? And same thing with the dancing. Did they talk about what they were going to wear? What colors look good on film, even though it's black and white? I have no idea. But this is the origin of film. They were very short because it was difficult to make. And it was really expensive. This is the 1880s or so. All right, we'll get to the Jewish origins of film, but we'll play a little game now of, can you name the non-Jewish name of the famous person? All right, maybe we'll go both ways. But first, anybody know who Emmanuel Goldenberg was? Edward G. Robinson. Pretty good. All right, we'll go with an easy one now because they just made a movie. Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan, Bernard Schwartz, Tony Curtis. You are good at this. Isser Danielovich, Kirk Douglas, Betty Joan Persky, Lauren Bacall. How do you know these? Just from life, from Jeopardy. From something. What? Google. Google, whose real name was Goldblum, and he had to change it. I mean, so some of these, they changed because it just doesn't sound as good. You want to be a movie star, your last name is Hirschlag. It just doesn't set off like the ingenue. You know whose last name was Hirschlag? It's more modern. Natalie Portman was born to Israeli parents on Long Island, or I think in Jerusalem, then moved to Long Island, and so Hirschlag. Then there's also non-Jews who changed their names too, because to be famous, you want to have a nice name with a ring to it. So you know who Archibald Leach is? Cary Grant. Cary Grant sounds like a movie star. Archibald Leach doesn't. You know who his cousin was? Remember who Cary Grant's cousin was? He was very, I'll say, rich and famous in the 1980s. I gave you a hint. He was rich and famous. Robin Leach, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, was his cousin, and so he didn't change it. Leach. Doesn't sound like an... Anyway, so, and now it seems it's less popular to change your name. So many people now, they keep their name. It doesn't matter how ethnic sounding it is. And in fact, there are people who are changing their names back to what it was before. So there was Zoe Saldana just won an Oscar. When I worked in the film industry, she was a client, and she was Zoe Saldana. Now she put the tilde back over the N, Zoe Saldana. There's other people, too, who have taken on their more ethnic sounding names, because right now, it's a line from a chorus line in the 70s. Ethnic is in. So right now, it's okay to embrace who you are, but there was a time it really wasn't okay. And this went all the way up. Do you know who changed their name from Zalman Moses? William Morris. Right. William Morris, who founded a talent agency in the 1940s, he changed his name from Zalman Moses to William Morris. I used to work at a talent agency called the Gersh Agency. And it's not as it's still Jewish, but it's not as Jewish-y sounding as Zalman Moses. But they kept their name, the Gersh Agency. And there's other ones too. I'm not sure why Bernice Frankel, that's a fine name. B. Arthur, wow. B. Arthur, she was on the show Maude and the Golden Girls and all of these things. So the studios were founded almost all by Jews. Anybody think of a Jewish studio head from back in the really early days? Louis B. Mayer. Samuel Gold. Say it again? Yeah. I found one that said Shmuel Gelbfish. Samuel Goldwyn. It's right. Most of them were founded by Jews. The Warner brothers were Jewish. Their last name was Wansel. Adolf Zucker founded Paramount. Wilhelm Fuchs founded Fox. Louis B. Mayer founded MGM. The Warner Brothers, who we know maybe as Jack and Harry and Albert, were Hirsch and Aaron and Yankel. David Sarnoff started RKO. Carl Laemmle started Universal. And Harry and Jack Cohn started Columbia. And then there were others too. William Ince and Walt Disney and Max Sennett weren't necessarily Jewish, right? There's a chance that they didn't even like the Jews, some of them, but it's fine. So why did they start? Why did these people get such a? Why was the film industry started by Jews, immigrant Jews? I mean, so I'm going to sit down. You can teach this. Like, this is just fun. I don't know. So part of, I mean, you're good, and all of you know the answers. Part of the reason I'm doing this today is I taught here several months ago about Jewish moments in film. And we looked at the Prince of Egypt, and we looked at Yentl, and we looked at Frisco Kid, and these like little Jewish moments in film. Since then, by the way, I went and I watched Hester Street, which everybody said, Hester. I rewatched it. It's okay. And also it's like not super Jewish, which I thought was really interesting. It takes place like in the Jewish world, but there's like no real Judaism. There's like there's the Yentas, there's the matchmakers, and they go, you got to marry somebody Jewish, but it's not like they're lighting Shabbos candles or talking about keeping kosher or something like that. So I taught this class here on that, and I taught it at Stephen S. Weiss and at Temple Etz Chaim, where I'm the rabbi. And then they called, how lovely, they said, you want to come back and teach more about film? I go, that's all I got. So, but I thought, what about the origins of film? All right, so they were excluded from other industries. So what industries were they part of? What was it? Garments, the shmata business. Butchers. Right, they had these other jobs because they were excluded from life. And here were these guys. So, what was that? Oh, and if you go back to New York, what got very big was vaudeville. Anybody ever go to a vaudeville theater? You're too young, yeah, right? You ever go to a vaudeville? It's like, it used to be like quick, silly, fun little skits. And you'd go there after working 12 or 14 hours in the factory. You then go to the theater and you get to have a nice time for pretty cheap. And the non-Jews didn't care about this because this was not their world. A lot of it was in Yiddish. And so after they worked their long hours and thankless jobs in the shmata industry, they could then put up shows and entertain each other. There was a very low barrier to entry. Anybody could produce one of these shows. Anybody could star in one of the shows. Anybody could show up and be an audience member. And since the wealthier folks looked down their noses at Yiddish plays, they were ignored, which meant they were able to flourish. If nobody else is coming in trying to compete with us, if nobody else is coming in telling us how to do our jobs, it got more and more creative. Early film is a horse running. It's 4 people square dancing for 4 seconds. And Yiddish theater started thriving with longer plays and more interesting things going on. So when the motion pictures began in the 1890s, many of the skills needed were related to the garment industry or to Yiddish theater. Could you tell a story? Could you tell an interesting story? Also, could you sew a costume? Could you put up scenery? Could you sell a product? This is what they were. Carl Laemmle was in clothing before he started Universal. Adolf Zucker sold furs before starting Paramount. Jesse Lasky was a vaudeville horn player before he joined Paramount. Shmuel Gelbfish, who changed his name to Samuel Goldwyn, sold gloves. Marcus, I don't know how to say his name, Lowe? He's related to you, L-O-E-W. Lowy? Whatever it is. He ran vaudeville houses, and so it was a pretty easy transition for each of them to now take up this role of making movies. One of the issues, though, is they didn't want to be seen as Jewish. They hid it's not only did they change their names, Some of them even changed their birthdays. Louis B. Mayer kept his name. Mayer was his name before, and Mayer stayed his name, but he changed his birthday to July 4th. He wanted to be seen as Americans. In fact, do you know why the conservative movement exists? I mean, not the origins of the conservative movement, which is a fun class on its own. The conservative movement exists because the Reform Jews, who were mostly German Jews who were here way before my family, saw people like my family crossing the ocean and coming here, and they were going to ruin the name of Judaism because the German Jews were trying to fit in here. And here comes my ancestors, who weren't necessarily so religious, but they had beards and payas and funny hats and accents and were living Jewish lives. And the Reformed Jews, who were already here, tried to convince the greenhorns who were showing up to be conservative. They knew that my ancestors and maybe yours weren't going to give up religion but weren't going to give up Judaism and become Reform. That's a strong statement, but don't judge me on that. Weren't going to give up Judaism and become Reform. They had to hold on to something Jewish. What's the Jewish thing that they're going to hold on to? So JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, thrived at this time because they convinced all of the people fresh off the boat from Europe to go to JTS to become American rabbis. They knew they would never go to become Reform rabbis, so Kaplan and Heschel and this generation who showed up here trying to live authentic Jewish lives were convinced to meet them halfway. I know you're not going to become Reform, but don't be Orthodox. Let us fit in America. And so here you have this whole new movement of conservative Judaism thriving as kind of an in-between, holding on to who we used to be in the old country and trying to fit in here. And the film industry people saw this too. They were kicked out of all of the other industries. They weren't allowed to participate in certain things. They couldn't join the country clubs. They couldn't have certain jobs. And so they changed their birthdays. They changed their names. They changed their wives. Shmuel Gelbfish became Samuel Goldwyn. His wife, Blanche Lasky, until 1915 when he decided instead to marry Frances McLaughlin. Not Jewish. And how many of these other people also divorced their Jewish wives to marry non-Jews? Because if you want to fit in this country, you can't invite your coworkers or your boss or your board members over for a meal, and here's, I don't know, brisket and kasha. You need to have them over for a meal and have, I don't know, whatever the what was it? Pork chops. I don't know what non-Jews eat, right? We're going to have an American dish. We're going to have a pot roast for dinner. We're going to have spaghetti and meatballs for dinner because we want them to be more Americans. They gave up their names. They gave up their birthdays. They gave up their wives. Almost all of these guys had a son who they named Junior, which is not unheard of in Judaism, just not as common in Judaism. How many people come to me and say, Rabbi, what do I do? My daughter's going to have a kid, and the kid's name is going to start with the same letter as my name. What a shanda. It's that's not a problem. That's not an issue. But here they're naming their kids Junior so that their kids can fit in as real American boys in that time. So it's just a strange thing. They wanted to join the WASPI community, and they still weren't allowed to. On the East Coast, they were still not allowed, so a lot of them started moving out here. Why do you move? How many of you were born in Los Angeles area? Okay, 3% of you. The rest of you, why did your families move to Los Angeles? Sunshine. They saw the Rose Parade on January 1st, whatever year it was, and they were in Chicago or New York or Detroit or wherever it was, and they go, wait, it's 73 degrees on January 1st? They look out their window and they have 5 feet of snow? Go west, young man. I mean, all right, so first of all, sunshine. Why else do people move out here? A job. There are jobs out here. There's something interesting and new out here. Why else? family. I mean, my family came out here because they were following other family who came out here, and all the different reasons. Peaches? Oh, beaches. I was like, I don't know if peaches are oranges, maybe. Yeah, they love the movie Beaches, and so they decided to move out here. The beaches, right? You get to, if you've been to like Coney Island, I know it's a beach, but it's like not much of a beach. You come out here, and you get beaches out here. Health related, how many stories I've heard of, we came out here because my great aunt had asthma and she needed the drier air. I guess that if that works, that's wonderful. So the weather is better, the air used to be better, the beaches are here, there's jobs here. Relaxed clothing styles. In New York, you'd have to wear a suit to go to the doctor's office. Now here, you can wear short shorts and a tank top to go to work. It's amazing. It's a little bit more relaxed out here. Yeah. College. That's interesting. I was just meeting with some teenagers, and they're discussing where they're going to college. And they're all looking all over the country. I was like, you know, we have some of the best colleges in the country here. You can't get into them anymore, but still, they are here. I went to NYU, and I tell the students that I work with, like, don't take 6 APs. Don't study every day for the SATs. You can get into college. They go, not anymore. Not anymore. So it's harder now. But right, there are colleges out here. People moved out here to go to UCLA or USC or anything else. Fight on. Okay. Another one is you can reinvent yourself. If people still know you as Shmuel Gelbfish in New York, you move 3,000 miles away and you become Samuel Goldwyn with a Y, Goldwyn with a Y. Nobody knows who you are. You get to be this new version of yourself. Everybody back there remembers your wife, Blanche Lasky, who they called Bracha. And out here, you move out here with your wife, Frances McLaughlin. Nobody knows that you had a life before. Right? How many people get to reinvent themselves in that way? Also, not only is the weather great, there's more land out here. I mean, I don't know about anymore, but my friends on the East Coast, when I moved out there, they were surprised. Our parking lots in LA are bigger. Not only is there poorer public transportation, but on top of that, it's there was just land. Nobody has a basement in California, both because of earthquakes, and you end up on top of your neighbor's basement after a week or two, but also because we had ranch style. Our houses could go this way and this way and that way. When I was living in Chicago, everybody had a basement because there was less land to deal with. And imagine in New York, sometimes when I feel like my house is too small, I've got 3 kids and it's loud, I think my house is too small. I think if this house, the same exact floor plan, were in Manhattan, it would be a $40 million apartment in Manhattan. But out here in Agoura Hills, you get to spread out a little bit more. In Encino, you get to spread, so you get more land. And so if you want to make a studio, you want to set up Universal Studios. Doing it in New York, you get a slice of Brooklyn. Doing it out here, there's nothing and nobody. You can buy acres and acres and build buildings and shoot movies outside all year long and I mean, you've seen what these look like. You've been there, but you've also seen Singing in the Rain or whatever, where there's warehouses where you could build lots, which you couldn't do in New York. So they came out here and they start a new life. Here, we'll show. What's interesting is in 1927, you all know this one already, 1927, almost 100 years ago, they were making one of the silent films, and the silent film was about a singer. You all know this one. Yeah. So they were making this movie as a silent film. And as they were making this movie, this is almost the plot of Singin' in the Rain, as they're making this movie as a silent film, they realize that they can line up sound and video. This is incredible. What are we going to do? Everybody's rushing to do something about this. And so the movie they had furthest along in development that they could go back and just add things to was The Jazz Singer. Has anybody seen the original Jazz Singer? It's okay. Like it's noted as the first talkie. It's incredible. and it's okay. Anybody see the remake with Neil Diamond? Yeah, we had to sing that song in Hebrew school here. On the boats and on the trains, they're coming to America. I stood up on this stage and sang that song for the Heroes plays, that 4th grade or 5th grade. Anyway, so here is, if you haven't seen it, here's like a 3-minute clip from the original Jazz Singer, and it's mostly still silent. It feels like a silent film. There's like the background piano and things like that. But just to note on this movie, so we'll watch a little bit of it. Wait, do you know the plot of this movie? Do I have to explain it to all of you? There's a great, was he a chazan? He's a great religious leader, and his son is being trained to be a cantor, and the son decides he's going to make it as a jazz singer. It's controversial because he does it in blackface, but in the Neil Diamond version, he doesn't, and he becomes Neil Diamond. And so he's training, and instead of becoming a cantor, he becomes a singer, and then his father falls ill right before Yom Kippur. And what are they going to do? And they call their son the big-time jazz singer. Can you come back and help us out? Because otherwise, they're going to play a record for... Anybody do that? Anybody go to a synagogue where they did that? They played a record? My old synagogue in Chicago, before they had a cantor, on high holidays, they'd put like a Victrola, I don't know, whatever it is, on the bima, and they would play Kol Nidre, which, like, you don't have somebody who could do this? Anyway, but... So here's a piece of that movie. Anybody know if that's Al Jolson's actual voice? I think he sings in other parts of the movie, and so I think it's his voice. It's pretty good, right? I mean, I'm not comparing him to Herschel Fox or anything like that, but like, yeah, how's the acting in the movie? Very realistic, right? Right, yeah, speechless. With one look, they can change the world. you feel part of the moment. I can't imagine watching this, in Poughkeepsie in 1927, Peoria, I don't know, whatever, Topeka. If they're showing this movie elsewhere and there's not Jewish audience, what's their response? That the first, which everybody had to see, the first talking, people are talking about the first, this is the biggest movie that's come out in years, and this is what it is. And then from here, just to note for fun, the movie is directed by Frederick Crossland, Jewish. Frederick Crossland. The dad, the father who in this scene perhaps dies, the cantor, he's played by Warner Oland, not Jewish. Anybody know what his most famous role was? Charlie Chan. It's not just the Jews who are being played by non-Jews. All the ethnicities are being played by others as well. The mother, the Jewish mother, is played by Eugene Besserer, who was raised in a convent, not Jewish. The role of Moisha is played by a non-Jewish actor. And just for fun, in the remake, do you remember who plays the cantor in the remake? Neil Diamond's father? Laurence Olivier. I don't think he was Jewish. I don't think he wasn't Jewish. They were still, even after this, I don't know what the response to this was. After this, they were still really scared to make movies about Jews. Here's all the studios are headed by Jews. And aside from this, there really aren't Jewish movies for a very long time. The closest we get is The Life of Emile Zola, which never mentions his Judaism. Did anybody see the new Bob Dylan movie? Does that mention his Judaism? No. I don't know if Judaism played a role in his life, but Emile Zola had a connection to Judaism, and the biography of his life decides not to talk about that part of it. There was another movie called They Won't Forget from 1937 that also doesn't mention Judaism, even though it is about Jewish people. And so they're really trying to shy away from who they were. They don't want to make Hollywood could have been just Jewish, and they were too scared to do it. There's a story, by the way, I don't know if it's true, that Louis B. Mayer, the head of the studio, was trying to get an actress to really emote in a scene. And take after take, she just wasn't getting it. So he calls her up to his office. This is the lore. Calls her up to his office, and Louis B. Mayer, who changed his birthday and changed his wife and changed all the things that he could be more American, drops onto his knees and chants Kol Nidre. And by the end of it, he is sweating and he is crying, and the actress is crying, and finally she understands what she can do in this moment, and she gets back out there, and they finally shoot the scene. When I looked it up, I couldn't find that it's verified. Also, I had never heard of the movie that this is about, so it's not like, and that was Gone with the Wind. I have no idea what that was. But still, just, it's somewhere in there. I think that's beautiful when I hear stories of people who are Jewish, and you go, are they Jewish? Is that person? And they have this, the neshama, the Jewish part of it is still in there, and when they need to access it, it's there. Jay? Oh, Danny Thomas did a version of Jazz Singer in the 50s? Yeah. So it's time for a fourth one. Who should we have in the fourth one? It probably exists somewhere. There's probably now a version of it where it's like a preacher's son who goes out to become an actor or something like that. But Danny Thomas? He was from Lebanon? I don't know. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so it says that as an adult, Jack, Robin, Joseph performed 6 songs, 5 popular jazz tunes, and Kol Nidre. And it was recorded by a British-born George Groves, who also had worked on that one.
Oh, so it was him. Right, and I don't know enough about Al Jolson outside of this movie. I just know that his birth name was Asa Joelson. My favorite name change, by the way, is Lee J. Cobb. Lee Jacob. And he changed Jacob to J. Cobb, which sounds, that works. I like that. I remember as a kid trying to think if I wanted to be a famous actor, what do you change Ari Averback to? So I went the other way. I became Rabbi Ari Averback, made myself a little bit more Jewish. But it's still, I mean, Sumner Redstone, his last name was Rothstein. There's a lot of these people, even today, have changed their names, and then some of them didn't change their names, and you wish that they would have, because we don't need that, that extra level of scrutiny on Judaism still. There was, all right, so what was the, yes. Right, I remember when I found out that Albert Brooks, his real name was Albert Einstein, and I got it mixed up, and I went to my mom, and I said, Mom, did you know that Albert Einstein's real name is Albert Brooks? Thinking that, like, the scientist changed his name to be more Jewish or something, and it turns out I got it mixed up. By the way, I could do a class on movies that aren't Jewish, but are so Jewish. We just showed at our synagogue, we showed the movie Defending Your Life, the Albert Brooks, Meryl Streep movie, Rip Torn, and it's the most, it's if Rosh Hashanah were a movie that never mentions Rosh Hashanah. Do you remember this movie? Like 1990 or so. Essentially, Albert Einstein. Albert Brooks's character dies, and when he gets to Judgment City, which is what they call kind of this in between. By the way, the Day of Judgment is one of the names for the high holidays. And so he gets to Judgment City, and he has to rewatch his life and explain to the divine judge why he was the way he was and what mistakes he made and how he could have been better. Like, again, I don't know how Jewish Albert Brooks is. I don't know if he ever went to, I don't know anything. And at the same time, there's something so Jewish about this movie. It's Rosh Hashanah as a film. You wanted to add to it. Bob Einstein didn't change his name. Right. But again, like Albert Einstein, I think you have to, like, I don't know if you could be an actor with that name. That's his name? The father's name was Park Your Carcass? If I remember correctly, their father died while performing. Right, yes. But anyway, what was his real name? You don't have to look it up. That's, what a strange thing. What was the first, after this, what was the next really Jewish movie that approaches Judaism? Gentlemen, thank you. Gosh, this is so great. Gentleman's Agreement. Remember roughly what year that was? I think it was 49, but like, right, yeah. So it's more than 20 years after this movie before the next Jewish movie shows up. Do you know why this movie was made? Daryl Zanuck, not Jewish, was rejected from a country club because they said, we don't take Jews here. And he had to explain to them that he's not Jewish, and they didn't believe him. And so he thought, well, there's something to this story. And so so it took a non-Jewish producer, he was Protestant, and the studio where they made it, they could have made it at any of these studios that were headed by Jews at the time. They made it a studio that was headed by a man named Spiros Skouras, Greek. So it took a non-Jew to greenlight it, a non-Jew to make this happen, starring, was it Gregory Peck? Right. I mean, obviously, it makes sense to star somebody who's not Jewish. And so here you have, and then it went on to win Best Picture. You remember seeing the movie? I remember seeing it. You remember liking it? You have. It's not told from a Jewish point of view. John Garfield, who also changed his name from John Gielgud. I don't know, whatever. He had a Jewish name, not John Gielgud. But he had a Jewish name, and he changed his name to John Garfield. But he was Jewish. Right. And the plot of I saw it so long ago. I believe it's a non-Jewish reporter who has a daughter, decides to go undercover for a story as a Jew, and so he pretends to be Jewish. He tells his daughter, "We're Jewish," and he sees how his elementary school age daughter loses friends, isn't invited over to people's houses. He then can't get a job. They can't get into. So it's told from the non-Jew's perspective, which maybe is significant, and maybe it's controversial, maybe it's problematic. There's a book that all the kids, I don't know if they're still reading, but a few years ago they were all reading the book called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I didn't read it, I didn't see the movie. I had some angry parents call me saying, "You have to call the school district and tell them to stop reading this book." I go, "You're not a member of I don't even know who you are. What's this about?" And the issue is it tells the story of the Holocaust from the perspective of a non-Jewish boy whose dad is an SS officer in a concentration camp. And maybe I didn't read it, I can't comment on it, but what it means to read the book from an outsider's perspective. That maybe it's harder to get into the mindset for people in Peoria, to get into the mindset of somebody Jewish as opposed to get into the mindset of somebody who's just like us. And so maybe it helps to have that it's made from the outsider's perspective. Yes, this is before To Kill a Mockingbird. Right. If you decide to become a big-time actor, and you have to be typecast as a role, being typecast as America's dad is a pretty good role to be typecast in. He is made out to be the non-prejudiced, very kind, loving, present, honest person, and that's who he ended up playing over and over again, as opposed to Archibald Leach, Cary Grant, who in every movie kind of plays the same dapper, debonair kind of guy. Maybe not always, but often. Yeah, it's worth looking at. And then when did it change? When did it change that you can get a Mel Brooks, Melvin Kaminsky, a Woody Allen, Alan Konigsberg, Barbra Streisand? When did it change that you could get people who are Jewish playing Jewish, acting Jewish, saying Jewish, speaking Yiddish? 60s. Why? Civil rights movement. All of a sudden we became aware that America is made up of all sorts of people, and if they can be them and they can be them, then we can be us. And there's a chance that somebody who looks like Barbra Streisand, who also sings like Barbra Streisand, by the way, and Pauline Kael, who I believe was Jewish, was the greatest film critic, until Roger Ebert. I don't know. She was the greatest film critic, and there's a great article that she wrote, I think for the New Yorker, about how Barbra Streisand changed. She wrote it in 1969, the year Funny Girl came out, about how Barbra Streisand is changing cinema. And you have somebody like that, and all of a sudden, because we're accepting Americans a bit differently in the 60s than we did in the 50s, we're realizing that we are a melting pot. People can be a little bit more of themselves. You can get Jeff Goldblum, who keeps his name as Jeff Goldblum. I'm sure there's a Barbra Streisand, Steven Spielberg. They don't have to change their names to something else. They can be proudly Jewish. Yeah. She didn't have to look. Sure. Look, if I were Barbra Streisand and I sang like Barbra Streisand, and then somebody said, "We can give you a nose job," there's a chance you won't be able to sing like yourself anymore. There's a chance that you go, "I'll keep taking Broadway roles where, from the mezzanine I look okay." And so she opted not to change her look. And what a statement that is. And then, last time I showed a clip from Annie Hall, 1977, where it really plays into his to Jewish ideas and to what a Jewish family looks like and sounds like and eats like and how we see ourselves is just so different. And then you fast forward, I know he's controversial, but still, Crimes and Misdemeanors, where he gets into a theological debate over Pesach Seder, which couldn't have happened in 1949. 1949, we're pretending to, we'll just kind of tiptoe into the idea of Judaism. And it's not for decades later we get to actually be Jewish. I never saw the movie Cat Ballou. Anybody know Cat Ballou? What was that? Lee Marvin. I know, there's a lot of movies I should see. The list is very long. But in it, there's a bunch of Native Americans, but instead of having them speak either a fake language or Navajo or Pidgin English, what do they speak in the movie? Yiddish. They have all of the Native Americans speaking Yiddish in the movie. And also in Blazing Saddles, right, they're speaking Yiddish. Right, and we couldn't, it took a movement to change, to go from pretending to not be Jewish to having an outsider perspective of Judaism, to finally an insider perspective of Judaism. Last time I was here, one of you came up to me and asked about the new Oscars Museum by LACMA. I haven't been. I don't know. Shame on me. I haven't been yet. And there's a big question of, have you been there? There's a question of, why do they downplay the origins, the Jewish origins of film? Anybody have a good answer for that? Maybe they want to appeal to everybody. Maybe part of it is the Jewish people were downplaying their own role. And so why are we going to out these people as Jews as they've been hiding as non-Jews? And so to say, they were Jewish, they were Jewish. I also, like, just the Schulweis part of my mind goes, what was Judaism in their life? If they were born to a Jewish family, raised secular, haven't been at synagogue ever, have never kept kosher, have never lit Shabbat candles, have never been to a Pesach Seder, but their original name is Shmuel Gelbfish. I don't know. Do we have to talk about their Judaism? I don't know how much it plays into their, I don't know, I didn't see the movie, I don't know Bob Dylan so well. How much does Bob Dylan's Judaism play into his life ever? Right, he converted to Christianity, came back to Judaism. I mean, Leonard Cohen, who also experimented with other religions, but Leonard Cohen's songs are Jewish. Synagogues around the world are singing Leonard Cohen songs. Other people too, they're Jewish. Spielberg's mom, you ever go to her restaurant, Milky Way? I mean, she was a character, and you'd go into her restaurant, and she'd like sit down, she'd wear her overalls, and she would sit down at your booth and point out what was good on the menu. Oh, this isn't good today. The guy who makes the best blintzes, he's not here today. Don't get the blintzes today. I mean, she was a character, but she had a kosher restaurant. He was raised, despite The Fabelmans, which I thought was a bad movie, he was raised with Judaism. And so I don't know, so that's part of it. The other part of it, the excuse of the museum, the excuse that the museum gave, and you can take it or not, is we needed to show all of the origins of film. And if we showed all of the Jews, our whole museum would be a Jewish museum of film. And we didn't need to do that. And I think that's problematic. And also, if we made a list of the best songs of the last 100 years, there's a chance that if we all wrote down our 10 favorite songs of the last 100 years, and we all made a list of them, and then we figured out which one had the most votes. I don't know this crowd necessarily, but there's a chance that one artist would have the top 10 songs. And at some point you go, we can't have 10 Sinatra songs, 1 through 10, and then other songs below, and nothing by, I don't know, Beyonce or Taylor Swift. You have to include something from the last 20 years, and you have to include something from Woodstock, and you have to include something from the Laurel Canyon era. You have to include other things. You go, all right, but so you're going to take off some. So maybe just to diversify, they're going to not talk about Carl Laemmle, and they're not going to talk about Fuchs, and they're not going to talk about I don't know. You need Louis B. Mayer there, but you don't really need Adolf Fuchs. Nobody remembers him, so let's leave him off. So maybe they're just trying to diversify in some kind of way, which I think is a little bit of a poor excuse, but it works for them. Wait, your hand up, was it up in the back? It's okay. I mean, like we're okay. Yes. All right, we'll come back to you then. Yeah. Right, she's saying it's called the Academy Awards Museum. It's not called the History of Movies. And so you're going to highlight certain things. I've heard it's fabulous. I don't know. Sure, I mean, right, and to know that it's not that Jews control Hollywood, and even when Jews, pardon me, did control Hollywood, we didn't hire Jewish actors or Jewish directors. We didn't make Jewish movies. Right, if I asked you all to name your favorite Christmas movie, I think everybody's got a good answer. Name your favorite Hanukkah movie. Your favorite Purim movie. Your favorite Lag BaOmer movie. Like, there aren't, even when Jews control, Jews aren't making Jewish things. They're not hiring Jewish people. And so it's important then to showcase in the Academy Award Museum the diverse history of the Academy Awards and of film. And you need to include Betty Davis, and you need to include Joan Crawford, and you need to include Jack Lemmon. I think, as far as I'm aware, none of whom were Jewish. Hopefully you also include Billy Wilder, who was. Hopefully you also include some of the, but it's important to show, black people in film, Asian people in film, how this has changed and how we can uplift their communities as well. So that's an interesting answer. Other last questions before we say Motzi? Yeah.
The Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges.
So Marx Brothers, Three Stooges, they were Jewish. They changed their names, some of them a little bit, the Three Stooges. The Ritz Brothers? Anybody remember the Ritz Brothers?
Crackers.
No. Anybody remember the Jonas Brothers? No. Okay. But so, right, and I don't know, I mean, for us, we watch this and we see Judaism. You watch the Marx Brothers and it feels Jewish. I don't know if they ever do anything Jewish in film. I know that they were Jewish to different extents, but they didn't, but we see it as Jewish. And we've talked about before, Judaism as a culture, it's strange because there aren't other religions that have that. You can't watch a movie and just go, it just feels so Methodist. This is a very Presbyterian diner, right? And his comedy is very Lutheran. That's probably not a good thing. But those don't exist, whereas you can have a Jewish restaurant and a Jewish movie, even if the Albert Brooks movie, even if there's no Judaism mentioned in the movie, it feels Jewish. Yeah. Right, part of it was vaudeville, then graduated to Broadway. You have these plays that people are dying to see on the Lower East Side, and you get enough ticket sales, you go, we got to move to a bigger theater, and then a bigger theater, and you end up being in Broadway, and so you have a lot of Broadway was Jewish, and a lot of them, I was surprised to find out that Ziegfeld, I thought he was Jewish, not Jewish, just it sounded like a European last name. But so some of Broadway was then, I mean, there's classes on that. We could talk about Sondheim, and we can have the debate of, was Hammerstein Jewish? But yeah. Ethel Merman wasn't Jewish? Ethel Zimmerman, she was Jewish, but her daughter, Ethel Merman, yeah. Right, and people are heartbroken when they find out that Rachel Brosnahan isn't Jewish, or Martin Short isn't Jewish, or Nathan Lane. He feels so Jewish. But nobody, you can't say that about, what? Martin Short, no, he's Canadian. He's not Jewish. I know, he's Irish. He plays Jewish a lot. You could be Canadian and Jewish, yeah. Charlie Chaplin was not Jewish either, as far as I'm aware. I mean, look, there's a lot of histories that we could have these debates about Christopher Columbus and other people too in history that maybe we don't want to count them as Jewish. I don't know. But Charlie Chaplin didn't like the Jews so much. Either way, it's just what a fun conversation to have with you. You taught me actually more than I taught you, which I appreciate. Thank you all very much. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi Averbach. Again. I'll just remind you, the lunch is here, and 12:45 we have the Great Decisions discussion group in the Youth Lounge. At 1 p.m., Rabbi Feinstein will be doing the Torah study in the Bernstein balcony. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks if you're not at the Walk with the Rabbi or the museum tour.
I knock on the first door. Edward G. Robinson opens the door. Inside is John Wayne, Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin. But that was and Robinson gave me a $5 tip.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We need a Shirley at our synagogue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But that
Thank you.
was great.
Sorry for Richard Dreyfuss. Does he ever play Jewish? Yeah, he's Jewish.
Rabbi?
Okay.
I'm sorry I got up before early. I just have to go.
How dare you? I'm just
Thank you so much. It was great.
Joel Gray. Right. And his daughter was like Jennifer Gray, but then she got the nose job and she wanted to fit in a little bit more. Anyway, she's in a real pain. I didn't.
All right. Well, it was great.
Good. Yeah, I'm going to follow through this time because after watching the Palisades, you're on your own. For the earthquake, I was here for the 94 earthquake. You're on your own.
Yeah. Was he the one who had all the great sayings? An oral contract isn't an oral agreement isn't worth the paper it's written on, and things like. All right, but include me out. I like that. Yeah.
Okay, you too.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. A couple months ago. Hadassah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, sure. I used to teach Hebrew school there. Back when I was in rabbinical school, I worked for Ron LaPaz.
Oh, hello. He's my go-to rabbi.
He's amazing.
Do you know Julie Rosenson, Rabbi Julie Rosenson?
I do. We were in school together.
She's now our
Associate rabbi.
Hear everyone.
No, I mean to hear.
No, I want to tell you what I was going to say.
Oh, I would love to hear. I forgot to bring a card, but Lena and Joel, Bill Green, didn't know how to get a hold of me. Yeah, she's like the sweetest.
Now I've got two things I want to tell you. The first one is the Jews were afraid to be accused of being controlling.
Right.
So they said. The other thing is I lived in Israel for many years.
I can tell by your Israeli accent.
Oh, no, not at all. I was born in China, actually. 5 generations Shanghai. And here's the other thing. That from a schmata industry, because they were forced to do all of it, with the creation of Israel, they had to go into every single industry. I was going to say, they created a country out of nothing. Everything, shops were run by them, lawyers, doctors, every single thing. I think with the advent of all of that and the knowledge, Jews began to be able to take on other things as well, because they weren't scared to say, look, we can do this. We can do this, we can do that.
Yeah, that might be. And it's also just that in Israel, there was this spirit to, we have to make this country. Right.
Andrew Rao was there from 1951.
You were there at the beginning.
Oh. Wow. Yeah. So 1951, we created Israel. I lived in a tent. We were in a marble in a hut. And I saw people coming from nothing, starting a business. They saw the Schmatters and the Alta-Sachen, they were riding in the streets and all of that stuff. It's very,
You have the most incredible, I mean, like these 2 minutes, your life is incredible. There you go. That's amazing. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, forget about this. I used to love film. I knew film. Okay, and now I haven't seen an Oscar movie in years. If you would ask me 5 years ago to name every Best Picture from Wings forward, I can tell you what year, what was going on, what else was nominated, and now I have no idea. I haven't seen everything. What did you do before? In the film industry, I worked for a talent agency, and then for a film producer. And then I came here for Shabbos one week, and yeah. And decided to, yeah. I've seen Avalon. Yeah, I want to find like that one clip to show, because you kind of talky without me. Like there's that one, but like, what's the Jewish moment? Yeah. You could have waved them, but like, we were just talking about it last night. My mother-in-law said, you got to show Diner. I don't know if I saw Diner. I saw Avalon.
There's 4 guys discussing Johnny Mathis. But I'm sorry,
Yeah. Diner. There's a third movie like in that group.
It's a story of their
I've spoken here full time about my life. I'm a speaker, and I'd like to come and speak for my
Wow.
which I know. I'm
Okay.
an international speaker.
Yeah.
I've been against the BBC One in London and online.
Okay.
But can you arrange for me to speak at your temples? Yeah, no, really.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh yeah, I'm trying to think of like what's the right venue. Is it a Friday night? You talk for 10 minutes instead of the Drosh?
No, 1 hour whole presentation to a group.
Okay.
Slides, and I've got 40 slides.
Okay.
I've done Israel, the early days of China, 5 generations, that's another talk. And now at the moment, I'm doing for the Jewish Genealogical Society at the end of this month, the Jews of South Africa. And I've done South Africa the apartheid years. I am very well known here for this. So, and online, they recorded my whole Israel talk in those early days. So, and I really would like to do that. So,
Yeah. Okay. I wrote that down because that's. Oh really? So I won't forget you. That's interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Another successful
That's
day.
very nice.
No, really.
Beautiful job. You are terrific. And I'm texting children right now to tell them how to be. We're going to see a real okay? I see.
You're very lucky.
She's the best. No, she is the best. Rabbi
It's nice you don't have to move.
No.
Right. Like when you graduate from rabbinical school and you're 28 years old, you go, I can go to Seattle for 3 years. And she's a little more established here.
Well, she was our intern last year. She's a she's got her wife.
Right. So in California.